Are you in Carolina?
I'm in Carolina. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be heading back to New Jersey probably a week from tomorrow.
Okay. We are getting the revenge of the 51st state.
What's that?
Lots of smoke
Oh, yes, yes.
coming.
Uh,
I don't know. It went all the way to the Carolinas, I think.
no, we haven't seen anything yet here, but it's I think it's as far south as Virginia.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
good.
yeah,
That's good.
forgot about that. Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
Mm. Yeah, no, I'm planning to go on into the UN here the week after next. So
Okay,
hopefully,
good.
hopefully it subsides a little because I typically walk
Yeah.
across town. So I don't know if I'd want to do that in the smoke.
A lot of people are using masks around here.
Yes, it makes sense. Makes sense.
And baseball game has been postponed or delayed or something like that.
Oh, that's right. It's right. It's tomorrow, right?
Well, tomorrow is the soccer game final.
Uh-huh.
They were talking about what they're going to see, what they're going to do about it. So let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it dies down.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yep. So, Stu, have you seen the notes coming out from the AI Fellowship about WASH?
I got a sort of a gentle suggestion from Naveen that the group might help, but I have not seen anything
Okay.
concrete.
Let me see if I can find that real quick. It was in my email. Uh,
I think, I've been frustrated by that because you and I talked early on and Naveen
yes,
said, oh, yeah, we can help you.
there's a G. Dale Gray. Does that name?
Yeah, Dale is my assistant trying to help find people. So he probably sent stuff out to many people. And we've gathered two or three people that are moderately knowledgeable.
Mhm.
But I don't, other than you and a little bit from Chuck, I don't have any assistance directly from AIRF.
Okay, I've been in touch with people from Congo, the conference of NGOs at the UN,
Yeah,
and we're looking at pretty much the same thing. How do we add value to an association so that its members on the ground can be more successful?
yeah,
So they have that problem as well because we're failing so much with regards to the SDGs. We just had over the last 2 weeks the high-level political forum at the UN, basically confirming that we're way, way off track.
yeah,
Um, so one of the things that I've been looking at is creating a knowledge base for every SDG target so that one has knows everything, knows all the methods that have been tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what are the details of the problems, the various scenario types,
yeah,
and building that using perhaps Notebook LM, because Notebook LM you can now use as a knowledge base that you take with you. So you can actually access Notebook LM from within ChatGPT, or there's the skills now for accessing Notebook LM. Plus, Notebook LM is changing radically, so it's now more integrated into Gemini. At any rate, that's one approach. But the other big significant change I'm recommending there is the number one problem we're seeing is that the reason we're not making any progress is because everything's just being left up to the grassroots. And the grassroots doesn't have the expertise or the resources in many cases to do much. And it's very fragmented. So when we look and say, how do we add value? How does an association add value to its members? One of those is by centralizing expertise in being able to accomplish economies of scale with
Yeah.
regards to supply chains and so forth. So, any rate, those are two um, big pushes that I see needed in that sense. As long as nobody feels responsible for the overall result, we shouldn't be surprised when we don't get the overall result.
Of course, each country is responsible for its own plan and implementation of the plan. Some are stronger than others.
Right.
Um, they don't
But
all have monitoring systems in place. They don't all care about the monitoring or the data. They don't all enforce their rules.
yeah.
So we get
But many of
haphazard
them don't have
results.
the means in the first place, or even the expertise to know what to do. So it's the
Yeah,
same problem like that we have with Rotary clubs in many cases, that if there was a coordination, not necessarily to dictate this is what you have to do, but to be able to go and say, hey, we have solutions available, we have supply chains available, so you can do these things at a reasonable cost, or we have implementation plans, training
yeah,
programs, etc., that can be made available even to countries,
yeah.
right?
Well, I want to let you know I have made some good progress. I do have an AI programmer who's been helping me do APIs with
Mhm.
some control and some consistency. I would say it's almost to the pilot phase. Um, I can show you that stuff offline, different meeting.
Would love to do that. Would love because yeah, that's so important to know what's going on. It's going to be very interesting because with the APIs, we now have this push towards the plugins again, back to plugins,
Yeah,
and the skills now that you can share skills across the different frontier models. So ChatGPT can use Claude skills, for example, and as a result, we're seeing now there's like thousands of these plugins and so forth available. And one of the things we have to be careful about is that we don't get into a situation that we spend a lot of time developing API solutions that then somewhat become obsolete. We saw that in 23, in 2023. That's what happened with the first generation of plugins. A whole bunch of companies jumped on that and developed plugins, and then the next thing we knew, that got incorporated into ChatGPT, and it basically obsoleted all the work that those companies had done at that stage. Anyway, so yeah, I'd love to see the progress that you're making. Yes,
good.
hi, Ian, Jerica, glad to see you. Rajendra, I don't know who Zoom user is.
Well,
So
let me just show you this one diagram real quick,
yeah.
if you don't mind. It summarizes the whole system we're trying to develop. So once we gather all the resources, turn them into gold standard quality stuff, then AI3 can make the learning artifacts, let's say using Notebook LM.
Mhm.
Um, Meanwhile, over on the right, AI number one will analyze the global grant documents and the input from clubs and turn it into a set of prioritized report to a cadre member. So the cadre member is then much more informed, broader, deeper, structured organization, and he can coach the club directly.
Mhm.
So it's a back end system, but it's really full fledged and supports the human side of what we try and do in Rotary Wash.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll, I'll send this to you.
Yes. Yes. Please do that. Please do that. Okay. We got another 1 minute here. Oh, yes. Jerica. Yes. Sorry to hear about that with your father. But yeah, take care of that family. That comes first. We'll catch up later today if you have to drop off.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Yeah. Okay. Very let's see. Oh, 1 minute yet. Okay. I thought we were going to have some folks joining us here that are specialized in this medical aspect. Let me just see here if they're going to be joining us shortly. Rajendra, yes, please. You want to say something? Oh, okay, maybe not. Okay. Okay. We'll see if they join. Let's see. Okay. So we'll see here. Okay, but we're now in time. Ding. I'm Bill Graham. I'm the president of the Rotary Dare to Be Great Global eClub, the go-to place for those who are crazy enough to think they can change the world, the whole world, and daring enough to try. Today, our topic is to some degree a continuation of last week's topic, where we talked about really the quantum leap that took place with the release of ChatGPT 5.6 and some other updates and other frontier models that really changed the game significantly. Where we went from an AI that you could ask questions and you could ask to do specific single steps to AI where you just say, hey, this is the result I want. Go figure out how to do it and do it. And moving into that kind of a situation. Also, we talked about the United Nations meetings, the two big ones. One was the high-level political forum, where countries reported on their status on achieving some of the SDGs in their respective countries. And the other was the first, I think it was the first major conference on AI in the UN that took place in Geneva, the AI for Good Global Summit. And the, one of the things that we felt was that in that same week, we saw a dramatic advance in AI that we feel is shortening the time to when many, maybe most jobs will disappear. And we're going to need a new global economic model. And the AI discussion at the UN, which basically said, don't worry about it here. There'll be new jobs and to replace those that AI displaced. Yet, almost all the experts in the field are saying, no, upskill, reskill, no, it isn't going to happen. If you know enough to be able to teach somebody something, AI will know enough to be able to automate it. The almost all the projections I'm able to find where people get down to not just talking about generalities and opinions, but look specifically at tasks and jobs and rate what's the likelihood that AI is going to impact that particular job and how many jobs are likely to be impacted. It's very different. And if a significant number of jobs are lost, that's going to impact our debt-based economic system, where people will not be able to service their loans. That's going to cause a catastrophic situation in the financial industry. And all told, basically our current societal model may not be able to survive. Now, we said last week that that's not a certain. We're not saying, hey, it's, it's 100% certain that's going to happen. It may only be 20% certain. But if that were to happen, the results would be so catastrophic. We can't just allow it to happen without having some kind of a contingency plan. Uh, Ships don't go to sea anymore without lifeboats. So we need somebody at least starting to discuss what do we do in the case that uh, the worst case in job losses happens, and a large percentage of the population loses their income, which means they stop spending, which means a lot of other people will lose their incomes, and something's going to have to happen. But our institutions are not set up to do things overnight. So the issue is if we don't have a contingency plan, we end up with chaos, and that it would be very, very bad. So anyway, we looked into that as well. I then saw here an example of how in certain fields things are advancing so quick. And one of the fields that I saw a lot of advancement taking place is in the field of medicine. And there's a lot being done all around the world to try to use AI with regards to healthcare. And I saw a particular video from China that was like, wow, that what they can really do all that, or they are doing all that, and I was very suspicious. So I did a little research and found out almost all the things that they stated and claimed in that were true. The only thing that is somewhat false is it's giving an impression that that's norm everywhere, and that's incorrect. But in terms of the specific things, in terms of certain functions in hospitals or in the medical field, those things there, I was able to verify that all the claims in the video came back as true, and I was able to get the citations and examples showing that. But it's sort of like the claim that, well, it's being used in 300 hospitals, but what it doesn't mean those hospitals are fully automated and doing everything with the AI. It means the AI is being used, but in many cases, it's being used as experimental in many of those hospitals or in certain aspects. So at any rate here, did everybody get a chance to watch that video? Did anybody not?
I haven't seen all of it, just the first little bit.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh, okay. I don't know here. Maybe what we should do, does anybody have any objections if I just played that video and then we can discuss that? We're only looking at this as an example of how in one field where the AI is now, where it is going, and then we want to see how that relates to a lot of other fields and industries. So, um, and no one has any objections to if I play that video? It's 20 minutes, so it's normally I wouldn't play something that long, but perhaps this time it's worth it. Okay, where to go? Okay.
There is a doctor in China right now that has read more medical books than any human could read in 100 lifetimes. It has studied every known disease, every drug interaction, and every treatment plan that has ever been published. And in early 2025, this doctor took a test, not a practice test, a real medical knowledge test designed by Stanford University, one of the top medical schools in the world. 9 of the most advanced artificial intelligence systems on the planet were put through this test. Models from the biggest tech companies, the smartest labs, the most funded startups, and one of them beat all the others. It was not from Silicon Valley. It was not from a company you have heard of. It was an open source model from China called DeepSeek R1. It scored a 66% win rate against the other AI systems and a macro average score of 0.75 across standardized medical assessments built from real licensing exam questions. But here is the part that should make you lean in. This was not a lab experiment. This was not a demo on a stage. Within weeks of that result, this same AI was running inside real hospitals, making real decisions on real patients across more than 300 hospitals in China. And the system is still growing. If this kind of work matters to you, hit the like button and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next, because the story only gets bigger from here. But how did an AI model from China end up inside hospitals faster than anything the Western world has ever built? What does a hospital look like when AI is not just a tool, but the entire system? And what happened in March 2026 that almost nobody outside of China even noticed? The answers to those questions change everything you think you know about where healthcare is going. The doctor that never sleeps. Think about how a human doctor learns. They go to medical school for about 6 years. Then they do a residency for another 3 to 7 years. Then they practice for years to build experience. By the time a doctor is in their 40s, they might have seen 10,000 or 20,000 cases. That is a lot. It takes a lifetime of dedication, late nights, and thousands of hours of studying, practicing, and learning from mistakes. Now think about an AI. An AI does not go to medical school. Instead, it reads every medical textbook, every research paper, every clinical guideline, and every case study that has ever been digitized. We are talking about millions of documents. It reads them in days, not years, and it does not forget. Every new piece of information is stored and connected to everything else it already knows. When a human doctor reads a new research paper, they might remember the key points, but they might forget some details a few weeks later. An AI does not have that problem. Every detail, every data point, every connection is permanently stored and instantly available. Think of it like this. If a human doctor is a skilled chef who has cooked 10,000 meals, this AI is a chef that has read every recipe ever written and has already cooked every dish in every restaurant in the world. And it never gets tired. It never has a bad day. It never misremembers a detail. When DeepSeek R1 was tested by Stanford, it was not just answering trivia questions. It was being asked to reason through complex medical scenarios. The kind of scenarios where a doctor has to look at a patient's symptoms, their lab results, their medical history, and then figure out what is wrong and what to do about it. That is hard. That takes years of training for a human. The Stanford benchmark, called MedHelm, tested the AI across 35 different medical tasks. 29 real doctors from 14 different medical specialties helped design and validate the test. These were real physicians from fields like cardiology, neurology, oncology, and pediatrics. They made sure the test was fair and that it reflected real medical practice. DeepSeek R1 came out on top. It beat models from companies with billions of dollars in funding. It beat models that had been in development for years. And it did this as an open source model, meaning the code was freely available for anyone to use and modify. But beating other AI models on a test is one thing. What happened next is what truly changed everything. A decade in the making. This did not happen overnight. China did not just wake up one morning in January 2025 and decide to put AI in hospitals. The story actually starts back in 2014. That year, the Chinese government launched something called the National Smart Hospital Initiative. The idea was simple but huge. Take the country's hospitals, some of which were dealing with massive crowds and long lines, and make them smarter using technology, not just a website or an app. The government wanted technology woven into the actual bones of how hospitals work, how patients are checked in, how they are diagnosed, how their records are stored, how doctors make decisions, how medicines are given out, everything. And this was not a suggestion. It was built into how public hospitals were evaluated. If you ran a hospital and you wanted a good performance rating, you had to show that you were using smart technology. That meant investment started flowing, not just from the government, but from hospitals themselves, from tech companies, from universities. Partnerships formed. Huawei, one of the biggest tech companies in China, started working with hospitals to build digital infrastructure. iFlyTech, a company known for voice and language AI, started building tools that could understand medical conversations and turn them into structured records. Year by year, piece by piece, the foundation was being laid. Think of it like building a skyscraper. You do not start with the top floor, you start with the foundation. You dig deep, pour the concrete, and make sure the base is solid. China spent 10 years building that base, and it was not always smooth. In the early years, the technology was limited. The AI models were not as powerful as they are today. Data systems were fragmented. Some hospitals were more advanced than others. But the government kept pushing. They kept investing. They kept setting targets and holding hospitals accountable. And by the time DeepSeek arrived in 2025, the hospitals were ready. They had the digital systems, the data pipelines, the infrastructure, the trained staff. All they needed was the brain, and DeepSeek was that brain. But to truly understand what this looks like in practice, you need to step inside one of these hospitals. Inside the smart hospital. Let me walk you through what happens when a patient walks into one of China's leading smart hospitals today. Actually, the process starts before the patient even arrives. Patients use a smartphone app to enter their symptoms before they come in. The app collects information like vital signs from wearable devices, recent test results, and medical history. All of this data is sent to the hospital's AI system before the patient walks through the door. By the time they arrive, the system has already figured out which department they need, estimated their wait position, and notified the medical team that is going to see them. So when the patient arrives, there is no confusion about where to go. The AI has already routed them. In some hospitals, a robot in the lobby greets you. It reads your face, pulls up your medical record, and tells you exactly which floor to go to. No clipboards, no forms to fill out by hand, no receptionist asking you to spell your name 3 times. Now when the patient meets the doctor, something interesting happens. The doctor talks to the patient, and the AI is listening, not in a creepy way. It is transcribing the conversation in real time. It is coding the information into the medical record system automatically. It is filing the notes without the doctor having to type anything. Think about how much time a doctor in a regular hospital spends on paperwork. Studies show that doctors spend about 2 hours on administrative tasks for every 1 hour they spend with patients. In China's smart hospitals, that burden is almost gone. The doctor's full attention stays on the patient. But the AI is not just taking notes. It is also helping with diagnosis. At Ruijin Hospital in Shanghai, one of China's top hospitals, the AI pathology system processes 3,000 pathological slides every single day. That is a volume that would require an entire department of human pathologists working around the clock to match. The AI does it in hours. And the results are not just fast, they are accurate. In pilot programs, diagnostic errors dropped by 15%. Radiology report turnaround time, the time it takes to get your scan results, dropped by 90%. What used to take a human radiologist 30 minutes now takes seconds. The doctor walks out of the room and the report is already ready. But here is what really changed the game. In January 2025, China did not just add another tool to these hospitals. They plugged in an AI so powerful that it shifted the entire trajectory of their healthcare system. The 300 hospital milestone. Everything shifted in January 2025. DeepSeek, the open source AI model that had already stunned the global tech industry, was deployed at scale across China's hospital network. And I need to be clear about something. This was not a trial. This was not a small pilot program with 10 hospitals testing it out. This was a full deployment. Within weeks, hospitals across the country were integrating DeepSeek's language models into their actual clinical workflows. The system was being used for diagnostics, for treatment recommendations, for patient management. Doctors were consulting it in real time during patient visits. It was helping them read lab results, understand complex cases, and make better decisions. By March 2025, over 300 hospitals had adopted DeepSeek for clinical use. By mid-2025, DeepSeek models were embedded in the internal networks of more than 260 hospitals across 93.5% of China's provinces. And here is a critical detail. The AI runs entirely within hospital firewalls. That means patient data never leaves the building. It is not sent to a cloud server in another country. It is not uploaded to some central database. The AI lives inside the hospital, processes data inside the hospital, and keeps everything inside the hospital. At Chengdu First People's Hospital, DeepSeek powers telemedicine and chronic disease management for patients in rural areas who cannot travel to the city. A farmer in a village hundreds of miles from the nearest major hospital can connect with a specialist through a screen, and DeepSeek helps that specialist understand the patient's condition, suggest treatments, and monitor progress over time. At the Jinshan branch of Shanghai Sixth People's Hospital, real-time AI workstations assist doctors with diagnosis right at the point of care. The doctor is examining the patient, and the AI is right there, pulling up relevant information, flagging potential issues, suggesting tests that might be needed. At Fudan University's affiliated Huashan Hospital, DeepSeek was stress tested across multiple platforms before full deployment. Think of it like clinical trials for a new drug, but for an AI system. And those tests were completed in weeks, not years. The speed is what sets this apart. In most countries, putting a new medical technology into a hospital takes years of regulatory review, ethics committee approvals, and safety testing. China moved faster, not by skipping safety, but by running tests in parallel and making decisions quickly. Some medical experts have raised concerns about this speed. A study published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, warned that the rollout might be happening too fast and that more safety frameworks were needed. That is a fair point, but the deployment continued. And what happened in March 2026 proved that China was not just testing the waters anymore. They were building something the world had never seen. The world's first AI hospital. On March 26, 2026, something happened that almost no Western media outlet covered. China opened its first fully integrated AI hospital. Let me explain what that means, because it is different from what you might think. This is not a hospital that uses some AI tools. It is not a hospital with a smart triage app or an AI imaging system bolted onto a traditional setup. This is a hospital where artificial intelligence is built into every single stage of patient care: prevention, diagnosis, treatment, rehabilitation, long-term health management. The whole journey, From the moment you are identified as at risk to the moment you are fully recovered, has AI woven into it. The hospital is located in Boao, in Hainan Province, and on the same day it opened, at the 2026 Zhongguancun Forum in Beijing, China, released the first internationally recognized definition of what an AI hospital actually is. Think about that. China did not just build the hospital. They wrote the definition. They set the standard that the rest of the world will eventually be measured against. But there is another piece to this puzzle. A research project called the Tsinghua AI Agent Hospital, developed separately as a simulation platform, has already processed more than 10,000 clinical cases. It achieved a 93.06% accuracy rate on the MedQA benchmark. To put that in perspective, human doctors typically score around 87% on the same benchmark. The AI is not just matching human doctors. In some tests, it is outperforming them. The Tsinghua system is being used to train the next generation of AI clinical systems before any real-world deployment. Think of it like a flight simulator for AI doctors. They practice on virtual patients, make mistakes in a safe environment, learn from those mistakes, and only get deployed in real hospitals once they are ready. China's National Health Commission has issued formal guidelines directing AI integration across the full life cycle of care. This is not a corporate initiative or a tech company announcement. It is national healthcare policy, backed by regulatory force and government investment. So while China is building AI hospitals and writing the rules, what is the rest of the world doing? Let us look at that. While the rest of the world waits. In the United States, the average patient now waits 31 days for a new doctor appointment. That is the longest recorded average in the country's history. It is 19% higher than just 3 years ago. If you need a cardiologist, you wait about 32 days. A gastroenterologist, 40 days. An obstetrician or gynecologist, nearly 42 days. If you decide to go to the emergency room instead, you will wait a median of 163 minutes before anyone sees you. And more than a quarter of admitted patients wait longer than 4 hours just to get a hospital bed. Diagnostic imaging takes 2 to 3 weeks to schedule in many facilities, with nearly half of MRI appointments missing their expected date. And then there is the technology problem. The United States, the country that invented the internet, still runs its healthcare system largely on fax machines. American hospitals transmitted 9 billion pages by fax in 2023. 60% of U.S. hospitals use fax as a primary method for transferring medical records between facilities. Technology from 1964, still moving patient data between buildings in 2026. Now, to be fair, American hospitals have adopted some AI tools. Electronic medical records are everywhere. Scheduling software is common. Some imaging systems use AI to help read scans. The United Kingdom's National Health Service has piloted symptom-checking chatbots supervised by physicians. Singapore has deployed pharmacy robots and elder care monitoring systems. These are real advancements. But here is the difference. In most of the world, AI tools are being added to existing systems. They are layers on top of old infrastructure. It is like putting a GPS on a horse. The GPS works, but the horse is still the thing carrying you. What China has built is not an addition to a legacy system. It is a completely new architecture. AI is at the center. Human doctors work alongside it, not buried under paperwork. The entire flow of how a patient moves through the system, from check-in to diagnosis to treatment to follow-up, is designed around what AI does best and what humans do best. Think of it like the difference between renovating an old house and building a new one from scratch. Most countries are renovating. They are trying to fit new technology into old structures. China built a new structure, and the results are already visible. But what does all of this mean for the years ahead? What this means for you. China is not stopping here. AI-assisted diagnostic systems in China are targeting 80% primary care coverage by 2027. Emergency rescue systems using AI sensors are already reducing critical response times by over 40%. China's smart healthcare market reached about 11 billion yuan in 2024 and is projected to exceed 12 billion yuan by 2025, growing at over 25% every year. Some estimates put the market at nearly 50 billion yuan by 2035. The country that opened its first fully integrated AI hospital in March 2026 is already planning the next 50. And here is the thing that matters for everyone watching this, no matter where you live. The question is not whether AI will transform healthcare. That is already happening. It is happening right now, at national scale, under government policy, with verified clinical results. The question is how long other healthcare systems built on old infrastructure, insurance bureaucracy, and regulatory frameworks that move at the speed of committees can keep promising innovation while still running on fax machines. China did not wait for the perfect regulatory framework. They did not wait for every possible edge case to be resolved. They built the hospitals, wrote the definitions, and started seeing patients. They tested, they learned, and they improved. And the gap between what is happening in China and what is happening everywhere else is growing wider every month. Now, some people will hear all of this and feel concerned. Is it safe? What about privacy? What about errors? These are fair questions. Medical experts in China and around the world have raised these same concerns. The JAMA study I mentioned earlier explicitly warned about the speed of deployment. But the alternative is not moving at all. And while the rest of the world debates, China is treating patients. If this changed how you think about where healthcare is actually heading, hit the like button, subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next video. And the next one is just as hard to believe as this one. Drop a comment with your honest opinion. Would you trust an AI system to assist in your diagnosis? Or does this level of automation in healthcare concern you more than it impresses you? There is no right answer. We want to know what you actually think. We read every single comment and we reply. See you in the next one.
Okay. Like I said in the invitation here, there's a certain degree of propaganda in that video. So we've got to be a little careful. However, I did go and ask it to ask AI to check each one of the claims that was made in the video, where it said a specific thing happened at a certain time or whatnot. And it checked about 15 different claims that were made in the video, and every one of them came back as true. But it's the overall impression that I think is the biggest fallacy, maybe, that it gives the impression that China is the only place that's really making a lot of strides moving forward, or that the use of the AI is in every corner of everything going on in healthcare, which is definitely not true. A lot of this is, yes, it's in use, but I would say the percentage of use is still puts it into what I would call an experimental stage. Also, with regards to what's happening in different parts of the world, we heard about the UK. The UK has actually got some very interesting advances that they're doing with their national health system, where they're doing coordinated work. And right now, and even for the next 3 to 5 years, the US is still projected to be the world leader in innovation in AI in the medical field. However, China is without a doubt the leader in the deployment of AI in the health field. which to a degree they have to. They don't have the number of working age people relative to elderly. They have a very large and increasing elder population, and so they've got to maximize their efficiency in being able to come up with the solutions. So I then went and took from that video and said, okay, great, that video was made at a point in time. What's being worked on right now, and what breakthroughs are expected in the next 1, 2, 3, 5, and 10 years? And what really came out of that is between the United States and China are the two leading regions that are driving all the healthcare work. And there's a very significant difference. The US is driving the technology, specific technology, in particular, the administrative area. They're tackling first the administrative area. So we see with the hospital groups that are growing up in America, there's hardly a doctor anymore that doesn't belong to a medical group, because that allows them to concentrate things like insurance claim processing or scheduling and so forth to create economies of scale, and the digitization of all the records so they can be shared across the various medical disciplines and so forth. The US, that's definitely the area where the US is driving. And I think we're going to see within the next couple of years, when you go to a hospital, you go to a doctor, you're going to be greeted by an AI, and that whole admin process is going to be very automated. There's already the leading receptionist software for that is something called Alice, and you can look that up. There's some demos you can watch in YouTube on that to see where that's going. And within a couple of years, that'll be interactive avatars that you will talk to and will greet you, walk you through all the processes and so forth. China's taken a very different approach. Their approach is to automate the entire medical function, the medical process. So they're actually taking the lead in looking to automate the doctor's job, the radiologist's job, the getting all your vitals when you get in there. So that is something that is a major difference. And I'll go into that a little more in a minute. But I see Amar Jaffrey's now with us. And I had asked him specifically to join us today because he's the head of Digital Pakistan, and he's also a representative from Pakistan in liaison with China, looking at a lot of technologies, advanced technologies and the like. So Amar, please, would you introduce yourself and just...
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. My name is Amar Jaffrey. I am a retired government officer from law enforcement. And currently, I'm working on three things. One is SDGs, second is AI, and third is cybersecurity. With my very close interaction with China for the last, I think, more than 15 years, Bill, I have two questions. One is working with Chinese is not easy due to language constraint, right? This is problem one. Second is that the technology being displayed in the video you have shown is a very high level technology. I'm thinking about Pakistan. Pakistan is a developing country right now. Yes, people understand in big cities like Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. But when things come to the grassroots communities, it's something very difficult to make it understand. So my exact question to you or anybody else can respond to this question, that this is the cutting edge technology in which it is total paperless organization. It's something very amazing. It sounds very attractive. But how? Because the people who are living in the uh, marginalized communities, they are the real beneficiary of these things. But the problem is that how the hospitals in that area, which is totally dependent on human beings, and they're not trained for that. So this is going to be the biggest challenge when we talk about implementing these things in Pakistan, especially at the grassroots communities. Thank you.
Yes, actually, here in the video, they did mention a little bit about that. But when we're talking about the major breakthroughs that are expected over the next couple of years, a major one is the remote medicine. That to be able to be monitoring, especially the elderly, in their homes, so that the patient doesn't have to call the medical system to say, "Hey, I need help." The medical system will already be able to detect that, and that's starting to be deployed in China. But you also see in Pakistan, you've got Adnan Siddiqui there with his deployment of the medical kiosk model that he's looking to deploy in thousands of remote villages across the country. China is starting to do that already, but they're not the only ones. I was at a presentation by the business manager of one of the largest hospital chains here in the U.S. a number of years ago, and they already were in the process of starting to roll out to clinics where they've got telepresence and other things there that take care of the vitals and just do a lot of the work. When we look at the medical field, you've got detection, you've got a whole bunch of steps along the way, and a lot of that is being modified. And what's critical when you get into a lot of remote areas where not only don't they have access to, let's say, to be able to go to a hospital or a doctor on a regular basis, but they very often do not have the personal awareness of when they need to pay attention or go, and so they may not recognize what's important. So these models that are being worked on right now to be rolled out, and I think we're going to see within 5 years uh, uh, big changes because the technology is becoming much less expensive and simpler to be able to deploy these systems. The first generation is the case like what Adnan Siddiqui is doing of having an individual, not as a full nurse or doctor, but an individual trained in how to capture vitals and how to handle the communication of symptoms or information back and forth or establish a telepresence connection. That is, as I said, being rolled out right now. But the thing that we're looking at in China, and as I say, China is without a doubt the head of everybody in the deployment. And the reason they're able to do that is partially because they don't have as much democratic um, decision involvement. So it's somewhat autocratic in saying, okay, yeah, we're going to do that, do it. So they're able to take larger risks that in countries where insurance and lawsuits and things like this cause hesitation. That's not happening in some countries, especially China. Plus, China right now is, let's face it, they're the manufacturing hub of a lot of the devices that are being deployed to actually implement many of these different things. So some of the expectations, and these expectations go the UK, United States, UK, China. Europe is got a big problem, and I don't know if they're going to be able to really um, deal with this because right now Europe is like super cautious, protect jobs at all costs, and go very slow. The bureaucratic and machinery is very slow, and they literally are falling behind day by day. And when you consider some of the countries in Europe 30 years ago were world leaders in some of the medical fields and so forth, this is a big change. But the UK, as I said, has some areas that are really uh, doing fantastic results. But the United States and China is the main thrust. And the United States, as I said, is sort of the bleeding edge breakthrough technologies, at least right now. China is able to do the mass production. Once somebody figures out, hey, here's a solution, they're able to do the mass production and get the deployment on the ground. And one of the things we have to realize, and I'm going to back off a minute to the general situation of AI, because right now, Hugh, could you mute yourself? I think you've got some background noise there. So the one of the things that we've been afraid about is, oh, look at the mistakes. We still have hallucinations, and we still have errors. Well, one of the things on that is that's getting much, much better. And the question is, well, why are we getting better? Is it just because we double check everything and triple check everything? Actually, one of the things is when AI first came out, when we first saw ChatGPT in 2022, the idea was we take all the information, we take the whole internet, let's capture every bit of information that any humans have ever recorded, let's capture it all. And so when you do that, that's like going and standing in the middle of Times Square or Piccadilly Circus or whatever and saying, I'm going to ask the first passerbyers what they think about something. And I'm going to believe what they say. But we know the average person is not an expert in most fields. But initially, we had so much garbage in our models that was garbage in, garbage out, in a high percentage of cases. What is changing is more and more of the data is not what humans are writing and humans are saying, but it's actually observed through devices, cameras, all kinds of medical devices. The information is being captured directly, and we're the the percentage of information that is valid information, especially if it's weighted towards more current information, is much higher. And that's what's contributing to a much greater accuracy. And at some point in the not too distant future, because more and more we're having AI go through.
Mr. Bill, I would
Yeah.
like to have you respond on this also.
Yes.
That all this gadgetry, all this technology, everything we are talking about is now based on internet, right now. So I think the health information is a classified information. So what security measures this gadget has? For example, if somebody is recording your medical vitals on internet, it is being stored. So what cyber security or information security measures are available in such devices?
That's a very big issue, but it's interesting. You saw in the video, they highlighted, and of course they highlighted DeepSeek as sort of the king and star of everything with AI, and everything I've seen that's definitely not the case. It's a very good model, but it's definitely not among the very, very top models, and especially when we look at Fable and we look at ChatGPT 5.6 and the new 3.5 from Gemini. These, they're just getting better so fast. But you're right. And in the US, all the major models, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, they are opening up specialized versions for medicine. One's for medicine, and there's another one for money, for finances. And so, with the one for finances, they're saying, hey, You connect all your bank accounts, all your mutual fund accounts. You connect that all and hand it over to AI and let AI manage all your finances. So you've got to expose everything about you and your finances to AI. In the medical, it's the same thing. They're saying, hey, give AI access to all your medical records with all your different doctors and hospitals and everything, your whole record, so that they can advise you. And to a degree, that makes sense because there's no value in going to a doctor and then keeping secrets from your doctor, so they can't properly diagnose you. But it increases that risk here, obviously, for cybersecurity. Uh, can the data be uh, stolen? Can the data be corrupted and manipulated? This is definitely a risk. There are big efforts, obviously, ongoing to make your information more secure. But we know, for example, with the Mythos from Anthropic, that we're reaching a stage where AI will be able to break every security code that we know. And so it's a constant battle. How do we keep ahead with the cybersecurity? Now, what the hospitals in China made a point of was that they are not connected to the cloud. Their medical systems in the hospitals, at least, are restricted to the hospital. So if you want that hospital to know your other medical records in addition to what is that hospital's doing, you would have to tell them explicitly or transfer that information. But that is a measure they're taking to provide the security. However, given that at the same time, they're saying, okay, we're going to have the hospital connect out to the elderly and others to be able to monitor what they're doing. That means you have to expose your technology there, maybe not to the general cloud, but at least to the internet. And of course, that is an exposure that could become a problem. So um, I think you have to do that. But one of the things about security, there were some years where I advised the banks of Switzerland, pretty much all of them, on the future of money. And in one of the meetings, there was a bank robbery that had taken place just a couple of days before that. We had the meeting with the top executives. And so they were talking about how to improve security in the banks against robberies. And they brought up all kinds of ideas. And I saw they were getting into a state where they were saying, oh, well, we have to almost do nothing. And I suggested, hey, I can tell you how you can 100% prevent every bank robbery. We will just bury every bank branch in about 2 meters of concrete with no entrances, no windows, no doors, no way in, no way out. And your bank's not going to be robbed. Of course, you're not going to do any business either. And this becomes the problem with data security. At what point does the data security become so important that it actually hinders the execution of business? I used to work for the largest or one of the largest banks in the world, and our department was responsible for fraud and security. And I know here there was one evening where there was a balance problem on the exchange of the transfer of the funds between banks, and it involves hundreds of millions of dollars every night. And there was a new manager there, and everybody was saying we got to stop the transfer because we're out of balance. And he said, no, do it. It's a couple of $10 million that we're out of balance, but if we don't do it, it's going to cost us 100 million more. Uh, so we do it, and we'll eat the loss if it turns out that there is a real loss. And I think this is something that we're going to see as a balance with all of these technologies between uh, doing business and getting those benefits and the security aspect. And we have to decide where is that break point where the the value of a particular function outweighs a certain level of risk or fraud. And I don't have the answers to that, but I do know here that's something we have to pay attention. And I think this is a little bit of the problem of Europe right now, where they are so concerned about the edge cases that they're hindering the mainstream cases, and that's not in the interest of society either. I want to go back to just this point here about the data itself is getting so much better because it is not data coming from humans. When humans translate, they go and they observe information taking place and they transcribe it or they describe it to the AI. We have along the way, there's a number of points where that data can be inaccurate, incomplete, whatever. As we get more and more into the case where it's observation and experience that the AI is gaining the experience directly, not via humans, and it's gaining the observation so the data is much more accurate. We see this in self-driving cars. Self-driving cars, we now have all these sensors that are capturing the information. Because we need to have very accurate information captured very, very quickly, so that the car can react fast enough to avoid undesirable consequences. And that's happening not just in the case of self-driving cars, it's happening everywhere. The other thing that's taking place is, uh, and if we go back a few decades, a human would go and say, okay, for this set of information, we should take this action. And it would describe what's the action we want to take. And it would program that. We're getting more and more the case where the AI is observing the action. It's also observing the typical reactions. And this was done also in the self-driving cars initially, where the AI was just tracking all the sensor input from the outside, but it was also tracking the sensor input that was sensing what the driver did, what the human did. And then it was able to see whether what the human did led to a good result or led to a bad result. And the AI was eventually able to program itself to optimize the system so that it would cause the reaction that led to the best outcomes. And this is how self-driving cars have advanced to the state where they're at today, and that advancement continues. And we're going to see that same thing happening in every field. And I think medical is going to be a leading one. Now, the medical one, keep in mind, that's not new. IBM Watson, if you recall, it beat the humans in Jeopardy, but it moved very quickly into the medical field, and it did amazing things working with Sloan Kettering, where they were able to go and track what was a set of symptoms, what was the diagnosis that a human made, and then be able to see after the fact, was that human diagnosis correct, not correct? If it was not correct, why was it not correct? What was the missing piece of information that might have helped us get a more accurate answer? So these things are happening everywhere right now, where the the information is getting much more accurate, but the process of determining the action and evaluating how good the action that we or reaction that we took relative to anything, was that a good reaction or not so good reaction, and the automating of that process. This is maybe one of the fastest growing fields. This is why the development of AI being able to write the code for programs and being able to self-improve on the programs. I mentioned my son that after paying for dozens of man months of development of an application, they saw that Claude was able to develop the same application to the same degree in just hours. So when we talk, there's so much talk about, and this was in the AI summit a couple of weeks ago, talking about reskill and upskill. And a lot of people are saying, okay, reskill or upskill requires that you know what a person's supposed to know. It's like when we go to and educate somebody. If we can describe the process that we're saying, oh, this is the way you do this. If we can describe the process, it can pretty much be automated. And one of the processes that people are really working on, like crazy, is the process of being the business process analyst or the systems analyst. In other words, it's not just the coding process. They are developing the AI that observes every single process that humans do and detects opportunities for improving those processes, and then goes about saying, okay, let's now develop that solution that is going to do that process. And so when we look and say reskill, upskill, to what? If the AI is going to be the one that is determining how everything works and what the processes are, where's the human, that we're going to augment? The idea that, okay, we need a job. Companies, first of all, they don't want humans. That's not what they want. They want the work that humans do. And then a human becomes a necessary component to do that work. But if the process is automated such that we don't need the human, then we don't need any of the tools that support the human in doing that work. We just do it automatically. And if we want to see, this is nothing to do with AI per se, it's automation in general. Go back and look at enterprise resource management systems such as SAP, where we started off, and that was what I did for about 10 years, is I architected enterprise management systems. And it was, okay, credit management. How do we what's the process of credit management? Until that point, it was providing the credit manager with the information so that they could decide on what to do for credit for a particular customer or situation. But at the same time here, there were guidelines or SOPs in almost every company saying, okay, if this is the situation, this is what you decide. In other words, we trained the credit manager what to do in what situation. So if we knew that this is what the company wanted done, why do we need the human to do it? So we were able to just totally automate the process. And we didn't need a credit manager because the AI could do it much more accurately, at least to the SOP. So the only thing we needed was the level of management that determined what the SOPs are, what are the decisions that they wanted made in certain situations. Okay, so when we look at the medical field again, within a very short time, they're talking about, if you remember Theranos, the the woman that ended up going to prison here because she claimed here that they were doing it and raised billions of dollars by claiming they were actually doing something that they were not yet done doing. They had a theory of how to do it, but they were not yet doing it. And so she's still in prison to the best of my knowledge. But there are so many area companies that are now working on actually implementing what she said that they were going to be implementing. And there's already dramatic progress being made in that regard to where you will be able to have devices that will measure all your vitals, but actually be able to do blood tests remotely and connect back to your doctors, provide all the information to your doctor, which is probably going to be an AI doctor initially. And that probably within 2 years, maybe 3 years, that's going to be standard practice. The amount of doctors already more than 10 years ago, a top executive of a large hospital chain said that it's not going to be too far in the future that they will not need human doctors for most situations, especially for family practice and the like. So what happens if we end up with a medical system that really is fully automated? It's going to be great for the patients. We're going to be able to provide everybody with healthcare at very, very low cost, but we're going to have very few humans working in the field. When you go today to the doctor's office and there's 3, 4 uh, um, um, receptionists sitting there that handle your scheduling, handle your record keeping, and check you in, make sure your insurance is up to date, make sure all your medications are up to date. That's you're going to have an avatar there talking to you that's going to do all that on the scene. So we're not going to need those people. We're not going to need the people who take your vitals when you first go in. And very soon, we're not going to need the doctor for the routine things, probably only for the exception situations. Yes, Genesab.
Yeah. Hi, hello, Bill. How are you?
Very good. How are you doing?
I'm fine. It's wonderful program you're doing. Just one, a couple of basic questions, right? And of course, the question coming from Pakistani people who normally ask. One, who is the responsible for all this? Once you have this AI-based hospital, everything, machine is there, robotics are working. If something went wrong, whom to be blamed for? That's one question. Secondly, who's going to, aggregate it? Like, okay, you are allowed to work with the all those robotics there, all the machinery is there, and you are allowed to work. So that's the two questions, Phil.
I didn't understand the second question.
Who going to allow, who going to aggregate, who certified, okay, you are okay to go with the machine and, you do your treatment of the humans, you are okay to do it. So who's going to allow, who's the body who is responsible for this?
Initially here, I think you're going to see there's going to be competition in the field. So when it gets down to the responsibilities and so forth, you're going to have competition. And so the responsible party will be the one that you end up going to. So if you go to hospital A and there's a malpractice somewhere along the way, they're the ones that you would sue. And those businesses are going to determine the speed at which they implement new technologies are combined with risk. And so they will measure the amount of risk for a particular new technology. Because on the one hand, they want to be able to advertise that they have the better, newer equipment or solutions than their competitors. On the other hand, they realize that advertising new increases the risk. But that's a business decision that they'll be making, with the exception maybe of where something like China, where it's maybe the government is saying, "Hey, this is it. You want this capability here? you've got to accept that there's a risk if you take advantage of it. Today you do that basically anyway. When you go to a doctor or hospital, you got to sign all waivers that says that you recognize that there's a risk and you accept that and you promise not to sue them. And so I think that will stay that way. On the other side, there's the regulatory aspect. For example, you cannot go out and put a sign that says you're a medical doctor unless you have passed the medical exams or have been licensed. And so I think for certain things, and maybe we're going to see even for certain practices, certain apps, that the app itself will need to be certified or approved, just like medications are today. You can't sell your medication until the Federal Drug Administration approves that drug to be sold. And we may see that happen with regards to AI deployment for certain kinds of deployment. And I think this might be why in the United States, we're seeing the deployment is more with regards to the record keeping and the paperwork and the insurance claim processing, all of that kind of area. Whereas in China, they are going more directly into the medical practices. I think in the United States, there's more of a sense that that has to be regulated. And so this causes things to go much slower in the US. At least that's how I would interpret that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Bill. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. So we talked about in the medical field, and we can see about this. If we look at Watson, there was a video that came out, and it's got to be at least 10 years now, about how Watson evaluated people for both diagnostic and for selection of the treatments. There were the two processes, and you fed in all the information about the patient, but also all the information about tens of thousands of cases so that it could find the cases that had the best match to what this particular patient had, and then be able to see what diagnoses were more accurate or what treatments were more accurate. And it would even come back and say, I have a 74% confidence level in this particular diagnosis. But if you would do this additional test, that would increase my confidence level up to 86%, perhaps. So, in other words, they were able to see that that based on the test results that they had, this was the best confidence accuracy level that they could come up with. But they saw that when people had this other test, that increased the accuracy and confidence level up to a different degree. So they were able to go and keep recommending tests and processes that would help them both with the diagnoses and with the treatment selection. Now, Watson, it had a certain degree of success, but wasn't as successful as it could have been, perhaps. And the reason that they now say was the cause was because IBM partnered up very quickly with a particular provider, in this case, Sloan Kettering. And so they missed a lot of the research results of competing hospital networks. But today we're seeing here that kind of an approach is moving forward very fast. So we're moving towards a situation where the AI will be observing what's happening with everyone, and it will be in real time modifying the information and the judgments, and it will just become more accurate, more accurate, more accurate, and it will be doing it just like a self-driving car without the human in between, because the human will slow it down and doesn't really contribute much to it, to the process. when we were in the early days, where most of the data that was collected was general data that we took from anywhere, wasn't necessarily only peer-reviewed papers and the like. So there was a lot of garbage out there. But more and more as we got better and better information, and especially now where we don't have the human middleman trying to interpret what they're seeing, but the AI is determining that itself. So we've got much more accurate information on all ends. It's going to take a while, maybe decades, before we really reach the potential of that almost all of the human interpreted data has been replaced by direct observation. But that's where we're moving. And this is why when we look, when we say, okay, AI is going to take on the job of observing everything that's happening in the world, and it will decide where there is opportunity to improve performance and then go ahead and do that. In other words, we keep talking about recursive self-improvement for AI models themselves, that the AI models are getting better and better because the AI is improving itself. But we have to realize that the bigger one right now is AI improving the processes that it is observing and automating. Just like the self-driving car is the example. So because of that, what can we look at where humans are going to be able to outperform AI or robots? There's almost no case where that's the case. And especially if we talk about upskill and reskill, we have to keep in mind to upskill or reskill, we have to know what the process is that we're trying to upscale or reskill that person to. If we know what that is, we can automate it. And the difference is to upskill and reskill people, you got to do it one person at a time. So if we need to upskill 1 million people, that's 1 million processes to do that. But with AI and robots, you do it once and it all knows. Well, almost all, because of the open source people putting up walls between some of the AIs right now. But in general, it's a much greater process. Okay. I've been talking about this a long time now, an hour and a half we're in. I want to hear, does anybody have any comments on, what you think about where AI in medicine is, and where AI is going with regards to medicine in the very near future? Keep in mind where China's at now, because they're big into deployment, and how much difference one year can make on that. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and your thoughts on that.
Well, I think with with the whole record keeping thing, it means that things like it's not so much that they could skip, but they could certainly find things that candidates for drug trials much faster. Because what they could do is look at, okay, how is this interacting with other drugs and so on, and have the AI analyze that to a level that's way beyond what we can do now. I mean, at this stage, we don't even know if people are taking their drugs. So we don't know for sure whether a particular thing is working. I mean, in the whole area of pregnancy, some countries don't allow tube time. But if you're on, if you're paying your doctor yourself, the doctor might just do it for you and not put it on the bill, and there's no record of that. So, with having a system where stuff is done, the AI knows it's done, knows what was actually done, the possibility of understanding how the body works is definitely going to go up.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's interesting here because you mentioned here a lot of times we don't know what's going on, especially with a patient, what's real and what's not real. Now we see already with things like the watches keeping track of your blood pressure now, your blood sugars, and even getting into certain limited tracking of blood. A couple of the blood lab reports that can be handled through devices, watches, or the thing you put on your arm there that will actually measure certain blood results. There's another video here that's very interesting. It's on elder care, where things are at with elder care. And that is tracking here not only the sleep patterns of the elderly, which is oftentimes a problem, but obviously falls or their blood pressures going up or down, or yeah, but it's also tracking even their nutrition. It keeps track of what they're eating. So again, in China, they're actually doing tests, I understand, where they're basically doing minute by minute observing of elderly, and they're able to send somebody to a particular elderly person's home to help them without that elder person even doing anything. We have those, what is it, those little things that people
emergency things you have around your neck or your watch.
neck, but you've got to push the button. If you don't push the button, it doesn't do anything. But that's within 2 years, I'm estimating, that is going to be totally unnecessary. That device will be tracking what's going on with you, and will keep the your medical support informed automatically. So yeah, that's a big area, the monitoring and detection of problems. Also, when you go into the doctor's office, you're going to get a much more exhaustive panel of your vitals and everything else just going in, and it will detect things that you need to be aware of without you even asking for anything.
Yeah, I mean, things like type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
A lot of it seems to be, there seems to be a suspicion that this is now down to some kind of parasite that lives in the pancreas. That's true or not, that's something that AI can determine.
Yeah, yeah, and there's just so much on that, and it's because we're having the AI. It's not a question so much of AI; it's a question of the ability to observe so much more than we have been able to observe at any point in the past, and be able to capture that and be able to analyze what we've captured. So this is going to radically change now, but we don't have to look just at the medical field. Yes, Sid, please.
Bill, just to add to the discussion that in the United States, we are already using remote patient monitoring and chronic care management, where we provide the tools to the patient. We enroll them, we provide them the tools to monitor their sugar or hypertension, the blood pressure, weight, and a few other things. The data has been transmitted, captured, and then monthly it was sent to the doctors. If there's an abnormality, for example, it goes beyond a certain level prescribed by the doctor, then the doctor is being informed right away, automatically. So it's a combination of AI plus humans.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yes, I actually have a relative that has high blood pressure, and they were given a device that they have at home. So they measure their blood pressure, but it's automatically transferred back to the central office that tracks the monitoring, and then they call that person if they see if anything is seen, if the AI detects something is out of the allowable range.
All right.
So yes, that is that's really going to go up gangbusters. It's like when you go and do your labs. Uh, right now, you've got your human doctor is looking through all your labs and writing a paragraph to every one of the things. Yeah, that one's within range. I don't know to what degree AI is already formulating the paragraphs that are going in there for the doctors, or the doctors are still writing those manually. But it's within a very short time. All of that's going to be automated.
There's also an effort underway of because right now there's a a person goes to maybe 10 different doctors and they have their data is spread out all over the place. So there's an effort underway to consolidate the data, and it is sitting on a device which is controlled by the patient himself. So it's an app where wherever he goes, is accessible. So because in case of an emergency,
Yeah.
the time is very critical, and you don't want to be requesting and accepting data from different places. So that those things are happening. Again, it's a combination of AI and
Yeah.
human effort.
And it's a lot of that is not even the technology per se. There, because of economies of scale, there's been a push for a number of years, perhaps 10, 20 years, for the medical groups. So instead of every doctor having somebody processing its insurance claims, somebody processing the scheduling, and having a whole bunch of support staff for a single doctor, doctors now belong to groups where there are hundreds of doctors, and they share one group of people that process insurance claims.
Okay.
Another group handles all the scheduling. Another one keeps the record keeping and so forth. That it's that's really what's going to drive most of the job loss, is the consolidation due to economies of scale. AI is just facilitating the acceleration of that process because it's accelerating the ability to automate. One of the big factors there is, up until not too long ago, automation required a human to design the solution and another human to develop the programs. And as I say, today we're coming more and more where the AI just knows, oh, this is what we want as a result. It designs the solution and creates it. And in fact, that's one of the big changes that came out last Thursday, a week ago yesterday, or a week ago, day before yesterday. With ChatGPT 5.6, there's now two modes. You've got chat mode, that's where you just ask a question or ask it to do a task. And you've got work mode. And the work mode, you just tell it what you want as an outcome, as a result. And it will figure out, maybe go through a dozen tasks to be able to generate that result. And that includes going through things that don't work. If you watch, because when you do that, it actually shows you on ChatGPT, it shows you, okay, I'm doing this now, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this. And you can actually see occasionally it comes out and says, oh, that didn't work. Let me try another way. You can actually watch that happening in the process. So just think that's expanding into pretty much everything. But if we're getting to a world where the automation is the result of AI observing the world and then automating things, what do we think that the humans are going to migrate to as far as jobs? We still had, just 2 weeks ago, the ILO and the AI conference was saying, oh, don't worry about it. There's going to be a ton of new jobs and we're going to upskill and reskill. But yet when we go and talk to AI and say, okay, what types of skills could those be? It says we can't figure out any skill that humans are going to be able to compete with AI on. And so that
You were asking the person.
What's that?
You're asking the wrong entity because the AI is partial towards itself.
No, actually not. AI is very strongly biased towards humans. And actually, you can ask it that. It's very interesting here because it will admit that it comes back constantly and talks about certain things that humans are better than AI at. And then you ask it about concrete studies. And then it will come back and say, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, the studies all show the AI is outperforming the humans."
I think a problem is that, for example, a few hundred years ago, some European prince gave a speech and was talking about how money and work were not necessarily related, and the people who were listening killed him. This is the problem we have in society at the moment, that our identity, our sense of worth is associated with the job we do, and we're gonna have to get past that.
Yes, and I think it's what's interesting is the studies show that roughly 80% of people hate their jobs.
Yeah.
You know,
and if you ask people who have very high paying jobs, whether their job is even worth doing, if it fulfills any kind of function, they say no. But we're not going to tell anybody that because we need to keep bringing in the money.
I think it's, yes, the money, but I think here because there are people that are making suggestions as to whether it's a universal basic income, universal basic
Could just be
services.
put on top of that other one right there, and then they can come get it for down there.
I didn't understand that.
There.
Sorry, Bill. I didn't mean to have my mic open.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought you were saying something. Okay. I think one of the problems that we have is that the solutions that could work are so radical. People are afraid to have them even mentioned. Because if a significant share, and right now I think the odds that at least AI came up with was that there's about a 65% chance that we will hit 30% unemployment within the next 10 years. And 30% unemployment the society can't handle, especially if it's unemployment among people that previously had middle to middle upper incomes. Because that will collapse the whole debt structure and the financial systems and so forth. So when we look, it ends upward mobility. If people don't have any means of earning money, that locks in whatever the ownership level is at that point that happens, that's locked in forever. So people that own properties and resources, they'll continue to have wealth, and people who don't will have none. And so the question comes and says, okay, what are we going to do about this? Are we going to have that small percentage of owner class have to subsidize all the people that in their eyes are useless? There's no economic value. In the past, the wealthy, they always had an economic need for the masses. The masses were the ones that did all the work and provided them with the things they needed. But if they don't need the masses for any of that, the masses become useless. And if the masses are very upset and not accepting of that situation, then they start to perceive the masses as a risk, an existential risk to their existence or their existence as it is. And because the nature of that discussion is so disruptive, just even the talking about it, that there's a reluctance to talk about it. And that is the problem, that if we don't talk about it and it happens, we're not going to have any time to come up with a peaceful transition process. So one of the things that we're seeing is that we have to do what we can to get people, especially places like the UN, to start saying, what if? Even if it's only a 10% chance, if it's a 20% chance, 20% chance is a greater chance than Russian roulette. But how many people are willing to put a bullet in the cylinder and spin it and pull the trigger? If most people would not do that. So if we're saying here the consequences,
even though in a sense it's what we're already doing.
Yeah, right. That's it. They don't realize that, hey, you're running that risk. It's just that somebody else out there is pulling a trigger, and you sort of feel, well, I can't control whether they pull the trigger or don't pull the trigger, so I'm not going to worry about it. But as those odds are going up, that either you do something about it, or you run the risk that somebody else that trigger is going to get pulled by somebody else. Okay, so the issues are, we've got a lot of people that are still saying, don't worry about it. We've always seen every time that technology has come along and displaced jobs, new jobs got created. But is there anybody on the call right here that believes that we're going to see significant enough quantity of new jobs that the people that are likely to be displaced are going to be able to do in sufficient numbers to absorb the people who are displaced? Does anybody think that is a likely scenario?
No, I don't think so. But what we could do is, in a sense, what Cuba did was to make it so that everybody in a household grew their own food in as much as that's possible. And because of having AI and robots and things like that, we could actually achieve that. We could actually make every household self-sufficient, and that would definitely tide us over the worst aspects of this particular transition.
Well, the issue gets into here, do you have a house? Do you have a place to live? What percentage of people have a house? And then if you can't pay any rent anymore because you have no income, how do we overcome that? As far as the food production bin, it's never been a problem of not having the food anyway. It's only a problem that people can't afford to pay for it. And when we take a look here, that's another area here. China has now done vertical farming in cities where they can reduce the cost of transportation and things. I forget the amount of tons, but it's enough to feed a significant share of their entire population that they're now able to grow in these industrialized high-rise farms. They don't need anywhere near the amount of water and nutrients and things like this to be able to provide. So the efficiency on food production is up tremendously. And that's Elon Musk's brother. That's his specialty. He's building in the United States. He's building vertical farms. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. But the problem's going to be if you've only got 1 or 2% of the population that literally own everything. They own all the resources. They own all the land. How do the rest survive short of a universal basic income? And then the question is that because you tax that 1 or 2% that they have to subsidize all the rest? And when does the resentment to having to subsidize a bunch of people that they don't see any value in, or the risk that the people being subsidized want more and are dissatisfied with the share they're getting, and therefore are seen as a risk to that 1 or 2%. And what happens then? And I can tell you right now, AI is prescribing or projecting that it is likely to result in a class war, a violent class war that could result in the top 1 or 2% looking to eliminate the bottom 90+%, to protect themselves from what they perceive as an existential risk to their existence.
Yep, that will happen.
So, at any rate here, so we talked, I think it's very enlightening to look at the progression of how self-driving cars evolved. And look here at how many, about 2 years ago, Google introduced, I forget the name, it's a robot arm. And the robot arm is able to observe the humans working at workstations near them that are doing something physical. And then the robot arm is able to copy whatever the humans were doing. And just by observing and copying. And what happens is with all these types of systems, they observe and they see a reaction to some action, and they conclude, okay, that's what it is. And then they do that for a little while, and all of a sudden they observe, wait a minute, it did something different. Oh, it's not the expected reaction. The human did something different. And that resulted in a different result. The value of the result is different. Or it could be a robot. It watched this robot, and all of a sudden it sees the robot did something and something broke. And why? Maybe because it did not capture all the factors initially, and it missed one. And that one factor, because it only comes up occasionally, finally came up and it caused the system to break. So the system now learns and is able to compensate or program in for that eventuality. So over time, more and more of the exception eventualities are captured and are dealt with and addressed. And so they get better and better. And this is why, even if it's not in the first round that the AI can automate everything, over time, it will automate everything. Somebody else want to comment on that? Because that, I think, is really the crux right now, that we've got the government authorities, the institution authorities are not discussing the possibility that almost all jobs are going to get lost, or just almost all humans are going to be displaced, and what should be done if that happens. More comments, please.
There will be an interesting discussion if it ever happens. But seems like people, the politicians and people who are the think tanks are not really paying any attention to that, unfortunately.
I can't imagine they're not paying attention to it. I think they're paying attention to it, but they don't know what to do about it. They don't know, because the idea of saying we have to plan for the scenario where all means of income disappear, or all means of labor-related income disappear. What do we do? And if it's not going to be paid for by labor, it's got to be paid for by more equitable sharing of the world's wealth and resources. And
well, people in
I agree that it's unlikely that they're able to do it. They're thinking about it, they're worrying about it, but it's a whole new system of thinking. And the law generally comes after problems appear, not as a planning resource. And so, unlike China or even the Soviet Union, we don't do 5-year plans ahead. We don't think about how to allocate new innovations, new resources. We wait for a problem to arise and then create a regulation.
Yeah.
So think tanks is a good idea, but think tanks have no power. So the challenge is going to be, how do you get this to come to a planning stage in a government that's never done that before it becomes an uprising?
Yeah, and think tanks are mostly on an ideological basis here in the US anyway. So they're not
Yeah.
really thinking about solving a problem. It's more about pushing public opinion in a particular direction, you know?
I think that's true. But I see where there is discussion. Bernie Sanders has a YouTube channel, and this is one of the top things he's been discussing is the risk of job loss. But the interesting thing about it is because of the ideological patterns, if you would, the solution attempts are all 20th century solution attempts to 21st century problems. So, the idea of saying, okay, no, let's forget about everything that's been and think outside the box as to what's needed. That's not there. There was a side event at the Second World Summit for Social Development in Doha last November. And I only heard this secondhand. But they discussed, because the mainstream discussion was a follow-up of the 1995 First World Summit that said we have to provide good jobs for everybody. That led to the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals, which were all about development. Development of the less developed regions will provide everybody with jobs, and that will reduce world inequality. That is the whole philosophy behind the MDGs and the SDGs. So the main topic of discussion in November was, how do we create and protect jobs? And there was a very small group that basically said, you can't, because it's not AI that's driving this process. It's the process of looking to see, how do we increase productivity and efficiencies that's been going on for 100 of years. That has nothing to do with AI per se. It's just, how can we do this better, whatever it is. And it just turns out that AI right now is enabling opportunities. But it's not so much AI. I think one of the things that I've observed is it's when AI first came out, and we just filled it up with the whole internet. So we got all the garbage answers out in the large numbers. Today, we're seeing more and more where the AI is not providing the answer direct. We're not going to the general purpose AI to ask questions. We're going to more small language models where we've got curated data sources and the like. But more than that, we're actually using the unstructured AI to develop structured applications. Just like the self-driving car, we know, hey, if this is the set of conditions, this is the desired action, take the desired action. That's deterministic. That's not going and saying, well, come up and say, what do you think the car should do now? It's programmed to say, if this happens, do this. And I think here AI is enabling us to deterministically automate more and more functions, because we're finally able to observe and analyze at scale to determine the causes and effects. And we're able to do that at scale, develop the applications. When we think here, like my son's case here, saying, hey, 32 man months of development can be reduced down to 6 hours. Wow. The idea, and I saw this to a degree. Kurt's not on the call here, but he asked me, he says, hey, I'm trying to publish a book with Amazon, and they have very strict guidelines on how do you put the cover, how do you upload the cover of that. It's got to be a certain size, and it's got to have certain characteristics on the cover, and you've even got to count the number of pages in the book because the width of the spline is dependent on how many pages, but it's also depending on what kind of paper and even what kind of ink you're using. You got to have all this information. I didn't know what the information is. I just went to ChatGPT and says, "Hey, I want to create a cover. Here's the picture. It should look something like this." And it went and figured out all this. It asked some questions. It says, "Oh, you need to find out this, and you need to find out that." So I said, "I don't know how to find that out. Hey, find that out for me." And I don't know, maybe it took me 15 minutes, and it did the whole thing. I was able to send Kurt the final result of that. So the idea of saying, don't do this, but saying this is what I want, and figure it out. Figure it out. How do I do it? How do I get there? And so this is what's enabling that compression to be able to do so much more, so much faster. But primarily, most of the world functions on SOPs, standard operating procedures. And we have common operating procedures where we don't have standard operating procedures. When you go to school, especially if you go into any kind of technical school, it says this is the way you do something. This is the preferred way we do things. So all those things, if we can say to a
And
human,
a lot of technical jobs, they used to be, how well can you follow the instructions?
exactly. And there are certain jobs, the last thing we want in the world is for the person to be innovative. The rest of the ecosystem around them is dependent on them doing exactly the same thing every single time. So this is, if you would, economies of scale, standardization is what is driving a lot of this, making a lot of this possible. But standardization, to a degree, everything is standard. But some things, when it comes to experience, they only happen maybe once every couple of months. So it takes a long time for people to become experienced in that particular scenario. But AI that doesn't forget is able to remember these rare occurrences and then be able to program in what to do on those rare occurrences. So I'd like to hear from some of the other folks we haven't heard of. Ernestine, Mark Henry, Alice, Jay.
Hi, Bill. Am I
Yes, hi,
audible?
Mark.
Okay, I'm in the airport, so I hope all is good. Now, I was listening and I was trying to ask myself, how can we approach this from another side? Because I think we all kind of see things from the same angle. And I'm saying maybe the solution could be in trying to imagine what would another scenario be. So, like, for instance, when AI gets back and says, hey, listen, because of animal nature, if people are threatened that their existence is challenged, so the 2%, then while the 98% are trying to get rid of the 2%, the 2% will try to get rid of 98. That's one model, and of course, AI has learned from human history. But then I look at other models, like I think it's the Amish and several other early settlers who left Europe, and they said, "Hey, listen, the world is getting too fast. It's modernizing too much. We can't stand it. And let's go and find a new world." And when they go to the new world, they live and say, "Fine, we're not even going to stay at the coast. We're going to go and find some our communities and do our own thing." You know. So could there be a possibility that when the inevitability of the advent of technology comes on and the inevitability of the loss of the jobs as we have always known and thought of them, when that happens, could there be a case that say a section of humanity just say, all right, so we're just going to go and do our own thing and let's reimagine life a simpler way and go do something else.
Yeah,
That way there is no conflict. Rather, there is an avoidance of conflict by getting out.
Yeah, no.
If that were to be possible, then, and the reason I'm thinking about it is I'm saying, how do we propose solutions? If we can think of scenarios and find them palatable, then we could even probably be the ones to catalyze their happening so that we don't end up with a disaster. We just end up with a scenario where, when horse carriages were replaced by cars, fair enough, people found other uses for horses, and cars and horses could coexist on the same globe.
Yeah, there are tens of thousands of these eco villages around the world where people have basically dropped out of certain aspects of modern society, and that might happen for some. I don't know, because when we start to talk about would 98% of the population of the world say I'm willing to go back and live at those standards? I actually had a executive from a large civil rights group say one of the worst things that ever happened to humans was the discovery of electricity. And the idea of because people no longer lived by the clock of the sun, of going to bed when the sun went down and getting up when the sun came up, because they could have artificial light. And she was actually saying here that the world was a lot better place where everybody lived in grass huts. And I sort of pointed out, at what age, what was the life expectancy in those eras and things, and she sort of didn't answer that piece. But yes, some people, I definitely imagine that. And I think there are parts of the world where you've got remote villages where those villages have almost no contact with the rest of the world. And they're not going to care what the rest of the world is doing. They have still uncovered some tribes, I think, in the Philippines or the Amazon, that have had almost no contact with the rest of the world. But that I doubt is going to be the norm. And
No, I don't see people going lowering their standards, coming from, say, New York and looking to the tropical jungle or something like that. I would look at it as someone saying, hey, okay, so you've got Waymo, but Waymo is not going to exceed 20%, and the rest we're going to retain fast drivers. And that's what they're going to do, say, as New York. So that would be the equivalent of other places are being extra civilized. Everything is automated, and they say, no, for us, we're going to preserve 80%,
yes,
and they'll be
regulatory.
So
Yeah,
in a sense, it is post in a futuristic world. You think of it as post primitivism.
Yeah. But here's the rub. This is something Bernie Sanders, for example, he says we have to go to the 32-hour work week. But the problem is that we're seeing here today, you can get somebody that goes out and they create a 100-man company with 100 AI agents and themselves. So you can't go and regulate the amount of labor that a company uses unless you're going to totally eliminate any kind of free competition. If there's going to be free competition out there, people are going to be looking for ways to outperform the next guy, and so that's still going to happen out there. But you could regulate things like right now we have the AI school, the Alpha School in Texas, that uses AI, doesn't have human teachers. And it's become one of the best schools in the United States, according to test results. They're in the top 1% in every single subject and every single grade level in just a few years. But when they applied for a license to expand into another state in the United States, the legislature of that state banned them, said, no, we're not going to allow our kids to get that better education because it will change the job of teachers. So they're more interested in the teacher's job than the
No,
kid's education.
I think their reason is it would change the fabric of our society.
Oh
I'd
yeah,
imagine
I don't think
they
they
had a
don't.
deep thought about it and said, Okay, fair enough. You could have very smart kids, but if you have very smart kids in an unstable society, then the overall outcome is worse than letting our kids be slightly dumber, but we keep the social cohesion.
Yeah.
Yes,
And that's the
I
kind of
think you're
thing which
right.
I'm saying, that trade-off where you deliberately say we will go 1, 2 steps lower than the ideal to maintain the overall social cohesion so that the end product is better, although it's not optimized.
They could do that because teaching is a regulated profession. And but for most jobs, that's not the case. And so this is the problem when, for example, Bernie Sanders comes out and says, "Okay, we're going to make it. Nobody's allowed to work more than 32 hours in a week." How do you govern that? So companies we've seen here, that's like minimum wage. Every time the minimum wage gets raised, a certain percentage of companies say, "Okay, I'm going to reduce the number of workers. I'm going to keep my labor budget the same. I'm just going to have fewer workers." How do you go? Can you go and regulate how many workers a company has to have without regulating exactly what they do and eliminating free markets? Because if somebody comes out and says, "I figured out a way to do this job in half the time," so that's going to cause that whole profession to reduce jobs. So they're going to say, "No, you can't do that." It's just like saying an AI, we're going to tax AI. If you use AI, we're going to tax it. But the thing about it is, if you use AI to just chat with and it helps you come up with an idea, and that idea really improves your business, how do we govern that? How do we say, no, no, wait a minute, you got that idea from talking to an AI? No, you can't use that. Oh, if you had gotten the idea of talking to your neighbor, that would be okay, but not talking to an AI. And there's no way to govern that, right? So there's,
I think yeah. Let's try to get back to the original question: was how do we deal with the social divide? I'm just going to throw something out there that's extremely radical. If you look at Terence McKenna's idea, he basically that our brains kind of got supercharged by the fact that we were eating psilocybin, in the dung of cattle along our sort of migratory routes. And in a lot of cases, certain times of the year, you'd almost have tribal orgies or stuff like that. And what you would have is that the kids of the tribe, you didn't know who, you knew who the mothers were, but you didn't know who the fathers were. And for the fathers of that tribe, every child was their child. And I think we need to get back to that. And I don't know, I mean, there's obviously a technological solution of if the technology simply created children and just allocated them, to different families, that's I think at some point society will get like that, but that's far into the future. But what we need, to start off with is the whole Bernie Sanders stuff of once somebody gets over 1 billion, that needs to be taxed very, very severely to bring it back into line so that we have a level of equality in society where everybody actually talks to each other. And that's the problem. The Finnish schools do so much better because the rich people still have to send their kids to the same schools as everybody else. And even where, when my brother went to school, he was in the class with somebody whose father was very rich, and he kept donating to the school. So the school didn't lack for resources. And this is the sort of thing that helped Finland more than anything else. And what had also happened was that every teacher in Finland has a master's.
Yeah.
No, and that's because of that, because you have forced the rich to live with the poor. Mm-hmm. And we have to do that so that, looking after your kids means looking after everybody's kids.
Yeah. I think that gets down to a little bit the idea of that there are limits to the polarization of saying, okay, that when we will not allow any individual's wealth to become more than 50 times the median, let's say, or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? So if you would, manage capitalism. But there's another problem on that. Right now, there's a lot that most of the suggestions go that universal basic income on taxation is not going to work because that's going to lead to what they call techno-feudalism, where that few people, that small number of owners, that they see that the rest of the world lives at their pleasure. And if they decide, no, I don't want to share that much, nobody can stop them. And because not only are they going to have the wealth and the power, they're going to have almost all the weapons, at least the significant weapons. So the model that Norway and the state of Alaska use with sovereign funds, with the idea that we're going to take resources, in those two cases it's oil, and they're saying, okay, we're going to share all of the benefits of exploiting that resource with all our citizens. So we'll basically tax that or the sale of those, and then we will share the dividend with everybody. And taking that idea further to apply to all resources, perhaps, so that the benefits go to everybody. Right now, so it's the dividends on ownership, not the income, and the almost all the discussion in that direction, though, is saying we will tax the AI and automation. But yet when it gets down to discussing how do we do that, there's a recognition that handles only a very small share. And even if we did it so that we taxed all the automation, the ownership, the people who own hotels and land and other machines, that wealth, they continue to have wealth. But the general population who has no means of income, they have no way to gain wealth. And so we've got two distinct segments of population, and there's no way to cross, no upward mobility, no mobility upward at all. So this becomes a very permanent between the useless class and the owner class. And so eventually over time, they don't see any use of each other. Well, obviously the dependent class sees the use. They're dependent on the wealthy here. And we've seen throughout history how many people have been willing to be an enforcer for the wealthy against their own population segment, because they say, I need to survive. If the only way I can survive is by suppressing my neighbor for my other neighbor, that's what I'm going to do. So the one really the question, and you can see more and more YouTubes on it of discussion, can capitalism survive in an era of post-labor economy? And there's a lot of people saying capitalism, and by extension, the idea of private ownership cannot survive. Because if we've got 90% of the population living at rent and 10% having ownership, even at just of their property, but they've got something of ownership, then that becomes a permanent division between these two groups. So it's got to be discussed, to put forward for us to say this is the answer. Personally, I believe we've got to find a way that we share all of the world's resources and means of production. And if we can share all production, so everybody has everything they need and want, but nobody's got more than the others. I don't know how, if you don't do that, how we have the ability to survive alongside each other without devolving into two species.
Yeah, and I think if you look at it from a spiritual point of view, if you're poor to the extent that every day is a struggle, and on the other side you've got rich people who are rich to the extent that nothing is a struggle, there is no advancement for either of those two.
Yeah.
And this is why I think where America during the 50s built this huge middle class where everybody's struggle was to become better at something, or just better people. That is the perfect society, in the sense that at least everybody can go somewhere.
There was a documentary in Germany showing a sort of this upper class family living in a big manor in the 1890s. Right. And they had a whole servants class of people, all kinds of servants that lived in the basement. And it was very interesting here because something came up, and the lady of the manor, she had to go down the basement for some reason. And that was the first time in her life she had ever gone in the basement and seen how the servants lived. And it was showing here how for food, what the pecking order was for food. First, the family of the manor was fed, and they were fed the best. Then the family dogs were fed with the next quality level. And the lowest quality level of food went to the servants. And the servants in those days were not, it was not just that was a job as a servant. It was basically you were like a serf. You were here. And it's surprising, that's not that old. I didn't realize that that Denmark had slavery up until the early 1900s.
Nice.
And because when I did some genealogy, I found out that I had an ancestor who actually was born as a slave. And he was a young adult only when he received his freedom, that somebody promised that they would do something if he could get his freedom, and he was given a Freibrief, his freedom papers. So that was not that long ago. It was maybe 1700s, but it's amazing here how we had just about 150 years ago, you had the class distinctions in Europe were so great between the aristocracy, or the landed gentry, if you would, and the common people, that it was almost like they were two species. Okay. So at any rate, though, what I wanted to bring out today was looking at this example of the medical progress, that we could take that and apply that to every single field. And I'll probably publish a paper that I did on the research of this, where it looked at all the functions that humans did from the perspective of, if we wanted to upskill and reskill people, what would we upskill and reskill? And there's a book coming out from Sal Khan, from Khan Academy. It's called Job Shock. And there's not a lot of information out there, but I saw him in an interview talking about it. And he's talking about, the need for upskill and reskill, and that they are trying to figure out what should we upskill and reskill. And there's a lot of discussion right now saying the future is we shouldn't teach people things. We should teach them philosophy and how to be critical thinkers and so forth. That's all well and good if you've got a means of income. You know, if we're saying, oh, your jobs are going to go away, so you need to learn how to philosophize about your life, and that's great. But you know, where did your
Be philosophical about your poverty, you know?
Right, exactly. So it's great that that's the fulfillment side of things, but we've really got to understand where is the food, where is the housing and so forth, where's that coming from? So I'm glad that we were able to discuss that. I see we've lost most of our audience here as we've gotten more into the abstract, but this issue, I think, is going to be very difficult to discuss and say that one of the things we've got to figure out the contingency plan of what we're going to do if the majority of people have no means of income, no job, no labor related means of income. What are we going to do? And if it happens gradually, it's probably going to be that we'll just go and provide them with some welfare so they can survive on the assumption that, okay, maybe it's going to take you a little longer to get a job, but you'll eventually get another job. And over time, we'll start to realize that's not the case, but it will go slow. And so the ones that have a job at that point, they're going to be more concerned about their keeping their job and keeping an income than on figuring out what they're going to do about their neighbor that doesn't have a job anymore. And so we will reach a point where all of a sudden here the decision's made, yes, we have to go to a universal basic income, and the wealthy are going to have to pay for that. But the wealthy are going to look and say, what's the minimum I have to pay to keep these people from coming at me with pitchforks? And the people are going to be saying, hey, I'm only able to survive. I'm just barely getting by on the minimum. This is not a meaningful life. And they're not going to be satisfied. And we're going to have that tug of war, class warfare between these classes. And the only way to avoid that is that we have to realize what are the potential scenarios that could happen, which ones are okay, which ones are not okay, and how do we migrate to the ones that are okay in a peaceful manner. It could be something like saying, okay, yeah, we have to recognize we have to share all the world's resources and we have to share it equitably. But you know what? We're in the meantime going to have a combination of a wealth tax and a tax on all the resources and whatnot. And the tax monies are going to be used to purchase all those resources and means of production. And over time, maybe over one or two generations, that the wealthy, all their wealth will decline until they're at the same level as everybody else. Maybe something like that becomes acceptable. I don't know. I don't have the answer.
Well, that was happening in the 70s until neoliberalism got invented by the owner class.
Yeah.
Where they convinced, they just brought out all these lies about productivity and all of this kind of stuff and
trickle down economy.
Trickle down economy and all the rest of it. Interestingly, as you were saying about the historical Europe, the Treaty of Versailles was not so much that it was punishment by France, although they did feed into that, but it was also punishment of the German aristocracy of the German people, because the eventual surrender of Germany was not down to any decision made by the upper classes. It was essentially a socialist revolution within the German Navy.
Yeah.
And the resentment of the upper classes on that meant that they made no effort to get a decent treaty with the French and the English at the end of the war.
Mm-hmm.
And just let the basically let the lower classes rot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because when we look at the history and see what has caused things, this gets back into the question of being able to project what is likely to happen in similar situations in the future. But like I say, the tendency is stick your head in the sand. I know 2 years ago when I was talking to various people about AI, the answer was, no, 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 I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Doesn't it hallucinate?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So at any rate, though, I think it's interesting that we look at the specific real cases. And I find because China is able to go and simply declare this is what's going to happen, that's where we're seeing the deployment and things happening. In Germany in the 1970s, what was very interesting was a lot of the technological advances in the US. Germany was not part of the research into those advances. But Germany, they used to say, okay, we'll let the US do the bleeding edge. And the
Right.
US had an economy that was like this. And so they would wait and then they would take the top percent and they would apply it across the board. So the Germany was more like this. Everybody went at once. And so when Apple Computer came along, for example, the pharmacies all implemented it. So back in the 1970s already, you could go into a pharmacy to pick up a prescription and it would already be able to tell if you had any conflicts with any other medications that you were taking. That was in the 70s across the board. That is pretty much ended. That was the because you had the professional associations in every business category, just like the unions. They don't go and strike a single company; they strike an industry. So the union contracts are with the metalworking association or with the automobile industry. And so that's what caused that to keep up. But now the Europe has become so paranoid, if you would, to change that they're running into a problem. It's going to be interesting. France is one of the few countries, and the UK to a degree, where they realize they've got to push innovation. This is why you're not seeing the innovation coming from Germany. You're seeing it coming from France right now in the EU. Okay. I don't know. I think we may have hit the end for this week's topic. The takeaway I'm hoping people will remember is our number one priority has to be how do we get the UN and other major bodies, other institutions to recognize they have to come up with a contingency plan of what to do if the current economic model collapses. Mark Henry, yes.
Bill, you sound like someone who's wrapping up something. And I wanted to preempt something before you do that and give us an update on where we are in terms of taking those small radical action steps that we wanted to take in preparation for the upcoming UN meeting that you mentioned, I think around September, October. I don't have my notes, so I don't remember the details, but I know that there is an important meeting. You're going to have an opportunity. The Secretary General may make some announcements. And as a club, we wanted to put some small building blocks so that we could contribute. I wouldn't want to say our small bit because I think we have unfair leverage. So we will contribute to what happens there.
Since the beginning of the year, perhaps even into last year, one of the things that we were hoping was for education to get the Secretary General to perhaps call for a global readathon called Read for a Better World, a month to Read for a Better World, to improve literacy around the world, but also to raise several $billions to reduce the number of children worldwide who are not in school due to poverty or hunger. But given the fact that this year is the change, it's the end of this Secretary General's year in office, and so the focus is going to be about the new Secretary General, likely to be somebody from Latin America. And given here what's happening with AI, I think the top priority that we should push for is to try to get in the General Assembly. And again, we have new people going to be there, but to try to get there, a committee established, or at least a process begun to discuss about what to do if AI results in societal change in a short time. The Secretary General job is a 5-year job. So the new Secretary General is going to be in office for 5 years. But I'm hearing that there's a good chance we're going to be seeing the radical loss of jobs starting in about 2 years. And it doesn't have to really hit home. It's not like we have to have 30% unemployment in 2 years. If people start to see rapid displacement of jobs, and they believe that over the next few years there's going to be more and it might affect their jobs, that's already going to affect people's confidence level, and it's going to affect their purchasing. People are going to become conservative, and they're going to become worried about these topics. And so that can be have as big a damage in causing job loss, because if people stop spending as much, restaurant workers, hotel workers, and a lot of other people are going to lose jobs. A lot of companies are going to say, we're not going to invest to expand. Housing industry is going to decline. If it starts to have impact, or believe that people are going to believe it's going to impact on the lending industry, that's going to cause the housing industry to have a dramatic drop. So the push is, can we try to get the powers to be at the UN to make a lot of noise about the need to come up with a contingency plan, and then work with media to make sure that the general public is being kept aware for the need for this contingency plan, so that they pressure their governments and everybody to be talking about it. So I think this is maybe what our priority needs to be. I had hoped to be in New York the last 2 weeks for the high-level political forum at the UN. Unfortunately, I'm still not able to travel. I'm hoping the week after next I'll be able to finally get back up there. But the General Assembly is taking place in September and continuing on into October. But the committee that's just been established, and we've got people like Wendy Hall, who is part of the new committee on AI, and so we can try to get these people that are in those kinds of roles also for education, because it's going to have a major impact on education in general. The new head of UNESCO's education department is from China, so that we can try to see, can we do a push to get mastery-based education? Because right now, education is still conflated with the idea of teaching. So everybody's thinking the solution to improve education is improve teaching. Personally, I believe the solution to improving education is to stop teaching, because we need people to become learners. And if you're being spoon-fed everything, as soon as that is not happening anymore, you stop learning. And so we can do it. Sort of like Rotary. Why does Rotary not support a lot of food programs? And the reason it is it's not considered to be sustainable. If you're going and providing people with food, the moment you stop providing them with food, they get to be hungry again. So the thing is, we need to come up with solutions where we teach people to become self-sufficient. And it's the same thing with education. So these are where we can try to have influence. Time is running out. It's the middle of July, or beyond the middle of July. So we have about 2 months. And it's hard to find the people because, as I mentioned, everybody's sort of focused on what's coming next. Who's going to be the next leadership team? And there's a lot of geopolitical aspects around that, with the United States basically pulling back from the UN in general, and the potential risk that the UN could sanction Israel, and that could cause Israel to drop out. If Israel drops out, there's a good chance the US will drop out and the UN will be finished. There was a big announcement from China this past week on AI. China is suggesting China take the lead in global AI development, because they're willing to provide the Southern Hemisphere with AI for basically nothing, and really help the Southern Hemisphere to develop AI. That was an announcement that this actually was, it could have been yesterday. The President Xi, the global AI conference is taking place in Shanghai right now. And I think that announcement was made in Shanghai. So that's sort of the things I think we could work on. And I also think we really, now is the time to make the push with Rotary, to have Rotary figure out how to add value. So that Rotary just goes and says, you know what, we're going to take the lead in causing needed changes to happen. Not just go out there and say, hey, Rotary clubs, 46,000 Rotary clubs, go out there and do some good. Knowing that the majority of the clubs don't necessarily have the expertise or the resources to do much significant good. And that's why we don't go and figure out how do we reduce homelessness. We figure out how to go and collect some clothing for the winter for the homeless. So,
Bill,
yeah.
Could I interject? I think that actually would be bringing Rotary back full circle.
Yes.
Because I remember in some of your earlier sharings, you did enlighten the group on how instrumental Rotary was in setting up the world order that has been for the last 7, 8 decades.
Yes.
So I think this could even be a galvanizing call, because I know you and myself and several others in this group have expressed how frustrated we are that for all the leverage Rotary can have, we're just going around, doing tick box projects and taking photos. Actually, in my year of presidency, I had no photos. I didn't bring professional photographers and the rest, because I said the objective should be transforming society, yes. Not documenting stuff. Yes, I know branding is one thing, but that was becoming an end in itself. So maybe if we could look and have a good appreciation that the order that has been stable is unraveling, and we can see it, the conflict and misunderstandings and the rest, then maybe this might give also Rotary an opportunity to go back to its roots and say, hey, listen, why was this thing so powerful?
Yep.
It's because there is people who say, listen, irrespective of where we're from and what we are and what we believe, and we think if we come together as common minds, we can do good for everybody.
Yes.
And maybe this gives us another chance to now try and give Rotary a new identity.
Yeah.
And I know you have connections right up top in Rotary. Maybe you could begin telling people, okay, fine. When we went out to eradicate polio, we were looking at a big problem in the world, and look what we've done.
Yep.
And now we have another big problem. So this is time for Rotary to step up, stop the boreholes, leave that to the government, and let's now deal with something that's going to affect the rich, the poor, the simple, the complicated, whoever, you know.
Yeah, and I think it gets back to just the thing of taking, for example, the cadre in our various areas of focus, and maybe even in the Rotary Action groups, to say, hey, we're going to not only just talk about issues and have interest in issues, we're going to take on the mission to do something about them. So we take responsibility so that when we see something is not being done, we say, okay, it's our job to figure out how can we cause something to be done. And we can use AI. AI can be very supportive of us in being able to help in that regard. But it starts off with Rotary accepting that there are cases where Rotary can add value by bringing together certain kinds of resources in a central fashion, whether that's bringing the experts on sanitation or the experts on things like certain diseases, whatever, and AI, bringing them together so that we can come up with proposals just so we can maximize the success of those clubs in the field who don't have the local expertise, but now we can provide them with with blueprints of how they can be successful in their community and provide them with aid through things like supply chains or training programs, et cetera, or even the public information, the publicity to explain why something is needed and people should get involved. So, okay, so I think here I'm going to look further for examples, but I think what's very important is it's still frustrating in so many of the conferences I attend on online conferences to hear so many people saying, no, job loss will never happen. Don't worry about it. It never happened in history. When the horses got replaced, the drivers of the horses became truck drivers, or the farm hands became tractor drivers, or working in building the tractors and so forth. And being able to show why that's not likely to happen this time, and making people aware that if the worst case happens, that we got something that's going to replace it, that we've got a path that's going to be okay, because otherwise people are just going to look and say that if that catastrophe happens, the whole world, I'm just going to die. I got no chance. We can't allow that kind of hopelessness to be out there. So we've got to be able to get people to realize there's a danger, but recognizing the danger is the first step against preventing the worst consequences of that danger. So anyway, that's hopefully the takeaway from today. I hope you found the session of interest, and I'll try to maybe send out some of the other some other videos that show demonstrations of advances being made in certain fields that people will be able to relate to, and then you can sort of extrapolate from them how that's going to impact other fields as well. Okay, any last minute comments anybody wants to make? Okay, with that then, I will declare this meeting on 18 January 2026 to be closed. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye now.
Thank you.